The walls are closing in on one of the most explosive political scandals in modern American history. What started as a routine document release has transformed into a full-blown crisis that's exposing secrets the powerful never wanted revealed. We're talking about the Epstein files, thousands of pages that were supposed to bring transparency and justice. Instead, they become a masterclass in governmental failure, questionable redactions, and a cover-up attempt that's backfiring spectacularly, and at the center of it all? The Trump administration's Department of Justice, scrambling to control a narrative that's slipping further from their grasp with each passing day. Today, we're breaking down the latest developments in this unfolding disaster, from shocking flight records and mysterious co-conspirators to internal DOJ communications that reveal far more than intended. This isn't just another political scandal. This is about accountability, transparency, and whether the law applies equally to everyone or just to those without power and connections. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will fundamentally change how you view the current administration's commitment to justice.
Congresspeople from both sides have been saying protecting a bunch of bankers or lawyers because they're highly respected is violating both the spirit and the letter of the law. Again, you could disagree with the law, but Donald Trump signed that into law. And despite all that, there are some really valuable pieces of information the public is learning from the files once we kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Today, for instance, we learned that during Trump's first term, this is back in January 2020, an assistant U.S. attorney wrote an internal email about a review of flight records as part of the government's case against Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, who has subsequently been transferred to a low-security prison after talking to Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. And this is what the email says. For your situational awareness, wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case, the email states. In other words, during a period in which crimes were being committed. The email added that Trump had been on at least 8 Epstein flights. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the only 2 listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old redacted. That seems like a justified redaction there. Remember what Trump said last year on social media, quote, "I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island"? That appears to be patently false, right? We also learned over the weekend that Epstein had 10 alleged co-conspirators. This is probably the biggest piece of news to come out of these documents today. So in another email, this one from 2019, the day after Jeffrey Epstein was charged with child sex trafficking by the feds, an FBI employee asked a colleague for, quote, an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. Now, this email also shows the incompetent or possibly malign nature of DOJ's redaction efforts, or at least as yet unexplained. Some of the co-conspirator names were redacted, and that would appear to be a violation of the law under almost all circumstances. You can't redact someone's name just because they might suffer embarrassment or reputational harm, even though Donald Trump thinks you should. The law explicitly says you can't. But then, in the same document, some names aren't redacted at all. As Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement today, the Department of Justice needs to shed more light on who was on the list, how they were involved, and why they chose not to prosecute. There's also the case of a heavily redacted court filing quoting an Epstein survivor. That survivor claims that another friend of hers was one of the many girls that had sexual relations with Redacted. She confided to me about her casual friendship with Redacted. Redacted definitely seemed to have a thing for her, and she told me how he kept going on about how he liked her pert nipples. But in another data set released by the DOJ, that same document appears without any edits or redactions at all. And guess what? The unredacted name of the man in question is Donald Trump's. Now, it's not clear why his name was redacted from the other file they released. And remember, an allegation is not evidence of crime. And in this case, it's not even clear she's making an allegation of a crime. Either way, the redaction, though, appears to plainly violate not just the law, but kind of the whole point of the law.
The pattern here is unmistakable. What we're witnessing isn't just incompetence, it's a systematic effort to protect the powerful while violating the very laws designed to ensure transparency. Let's be crystal clear about what's happening. The Trump administration is attempting to manage a public relations nightmare, not deliver justice to survivors or accountability to perpetrators. And this approach is failing on every conceivable level. Recent developments have only intensified the scrutiny. Just days ago, additional leaked communications from within the Justice Department revealed that officials were actively debating how to minimize reputational damage rather than how to maximize disclosure. That's not the language of transparency, that's the vocabulary of cover-up. Of the restructuring at DOJ speaks volumes. When an attorney general loses control of even the messaging around such a critical issue, it signals deeper organizational chaos. Reports now confirm that White House communications staff, political operatives, not legal professionals, have taken over the department's social media presence and public-facing statements regarding the Epstein file releases. Think about the implications here. The Department of Justice, supposedly an independent law enforcement agency, is now having its public communications managed by political spin doctors whose sole loyalty is to protecting one man's image. This isn't normal. This isn't how a functioning democracy operates. And it certainly isn't what Congress mandated when they passed the Epstein Transparency Act, legislation that, ironically, bears the signature of the very president now working to undermine it. But here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. Because while the administration scrambles to contain the damage, voices from unexpected corners are demonstrating exactly how innocent people should respond when their names appear in sensitive documents.
Well, tonight, with the world now wondering about the 10 co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein referred to in some of the Epstein files released today, it is worth considering. What would an innocent person do? What would someone who is mentioned in the Epstein files do if he or she believed that he or she is totally innocent of any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein? Former President Bill Clinton's office put out a statement saying, quote, "We call on President Trump to direct Attorney General Bondi to immediately release any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of Bill Clinton." And there it is. That is the model for how you handle this situation if you are in the Epstein files and you believe you did nothing wrong. Please feel free to now consider all of the prominent names you have heard this year associated with the Jeffrey Epstein, who have not demanded the immediate release of any materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of that person. Donald Trump has never demanded that. Donald Trump has done everything he could to prevent that from happening. Jeffrey Epstein's biggest business partner, Les Wexner, has never said, "Release everything about me that's in the Epstein files." And he is not saying it now, after his name emerged today in a 2019 Justice Department email titled Co-conspirators. The email described attempts to subpoena the list of co-conspirators, which included Ghislaine Maxwell. A legal representative for Mr. Wexner told the New York Times that he was not a target of the federal investigation or considered a co-conspirator. He provided federal prosecutors with background information on Mr. Epstein and was never contacted again, the representative said. So I guess that settles that. If a lawyer for Mr. Wexner of Ohio says he did nothing wrong, that must settle it. I would love to have that lawyer for Mr. Wexner of Ohio join us here on this program and tell us whether he responded to a grand jury subpoena and whether he testified to the grand jury. I'd love to have Mr. Wexner of Ohio come here and tell us all about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which no one has ever been able to understand or explain. Mr. Wexner is so much richer than Jeffrey Epstein could ever have dreamed of being, and no one's ever figured out why Les Wexner would be in business with Jeffrey Epstein in any way. So what was that all about? And we patiently await Mr. Wexner's lawyer issuing a statement saying that they demand immediately the release of all information in the Epstein files about him and any photograph of him in the Epstein files. We patiently await that moment. There is no indication that Donald Trump was on the list of co-conspirators. But here's what Donald Trump said about Jeffrey Epstein's most important co-conspirator after she was convicted of sex trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein.
I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is.
Yes, he did see her numerous times over the years. New information from the Epstein files today revealed that Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane in the 1990s more often than he has ever admitted. In fact, Donald Trump has told the lie that he never flew on that plane. At least 4 of the Trump flights on the Epstein plane included Ghislaine Maxwell among the passengers Donald Trump was flying with. Donald Trump wishes Ghislaine Maxwell well. Donald Trump did not issue a statement today demanding the immediate release of any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing a photograph of Donald Trump. Another email about co-conspirators released today said, quote, of the 10 co-conspirators, 3 have been located in Florida and served grand jury subpoenas. 1 in Boston, 1 in New York City, and 1 in Connecticut were located and served. 4 of the 10 are outstanding, with attempts having been made. 1 is a wealthy businessman in Ohio. The remaining 3 are currently out of pocket. The team is flying out tonight, tomorrow, to various locations in Florida to interview approximately 25 victims. If you were a wealthy businessman in Ohio who knew Jeffrey Epstein and you think you did nothing wrong, wouldn't you release a statement today just like Bill Clinton's?
The contrast couldn't be starker. On one side, you have individuals demanding full transparency, willing to let every document, every photograph, every mention see the light of day. On the other side, you have silence, obstruction, and a White House communications team managing the Justice Department's Twitter account. As we close out this year, one thing has become abundantly clear: this story is far from over. The failed redactions, the mysterious co-conspirators, the flight logs that contradict years of denials, these are threads that will continue unraveling well into the new year. The question now isn't whether more damaging information will emerge. It's whether accountability will follow. Whether the survivors of these alleged crimes will see justice. And whether the American people will accept a system where the powerful write their own rules. We'll continue following every development in this story. Because transparency isn't a political issue, it's a fundamental principle of justice. And justice delayed is justice denied.